So I do have a title for my sharing tonight. It's called The Path Forward. The Path Forward. How could we find a way in this situation to move forward? So it's a reflection on Zion's struggles since 2017. The content in this sharing is by no means just by myself. It's a kind of a collective wisdom. Much of it from our senior pastor Ezra Jean, and also I get some input from Abraham. So it's a collective effort that we did, and it's just me to present it to all of you. So I actually have this slide originally by the end of my sharing, but Abraham felt that I should bring it forward to the first. It's in a short word, we fear that this vision that the whole church taking the whole gospel to the whole world has never been closer to us, at least. So I hope by the end of my sharing, you would feel the same way. So I will do three parts. The first part would be very short. I just want to put all of you in the of this one church into this big picture of the whole Protestant churches in China. So I will just very briefly a history of Chinese Protestant churches until 2017. So some people are divided kind of 3 centuries of Chinese churches since 1807. The first 100 years from 1807, from Robert Morrison landed in China to 1907 to the centenary China Mission Conference in Shanghai. It's called China Mission Centuries. In this 100 years, the missionaries and their work is dominating how the Chinese churches developed. But since 1907, the major theme is how to develop kind of China church, the Chinese net or the Chinese kind of more original, if you may, a church. And from 2007 to, we hope that 2107, that we would see a mission China.
大卫，我再试一下，你现在可以听到吗？大卫听不到了是吧？好，现在我们就是中文的可以切换到中文这边来翻译了啊。刚才王林讲的呢，基本上是中国过去的教会的历史，所以那段时间大家误国也还不算太影响。抱歉啊，这个刚才不知道怎么回事出现这个情况，好，这下我可以集中精力来翻译了啊。
Actually, between 1951 to 1952, the Three Self Movement ended.
所以他讲到，在过去的几十年当中呢，三自教会的这种发展，还有家庭教会的发展。所以1949到1978年30年的时间，中国的家庭教会和三自教会基本上都没有什么发展。从1978年到2027年，中国有一个大的复兴。It's really a coming back of spiritual realm, including a kind of a Christian revival. So from 1978 to 2017. 所以过去的这40年有一个很大的复兴。这段时间相对来讲呢，中国有很多的自由。 从1978到2017年呢，也有3个阶段。
Characteristic of this type of church is they focus on two things. First, evangelism, just evangelism.
所以在版本1呢，当初最主要的大家集中精力在2点，一个是传福音，再一个是如何生存。
How to continue, how to have a gathering next week. Church 2.0. It's called in Chinese 堂会中心的教会. I have discussed this term with Abraham with David. I believe we cannot find a suitable term to translate this idea. So we use congregation-centered churches. But it's not really, we're not talking about congregational churches as a church governance. It's kind of a type of a ministry or a type of church in China that moving beyond evangelism, moving beyond how to survive, focus on building kind of full-fledged ministries, like youth ministries, like like marriage ministries, not just evangelism, but full-fledged ministries, and also structures, like how to govern the church, how to build. So it's kind of a going more grown up, if you may, at the church. And the second characteristics during this period is that the Chinese church learned greatly from Western churches, from Korea, from Southeast Asia, like Singapore, like Hong Kong, like Malaysia, from America. The European influence is comparatively less than these areas I just mentioned. And for all the successful churches, it doesn't matter whether it's very conservative or very kind of open, or you can find some followers in China are following them. So we learned greatly from the Western churches during this period. So now we're talking about the church 3.0 up to 2017. And what does it mean? I will explain later. So between I introduce you what does it mean to be church 3.0, there's one key, if you may, the situation that pushes us from church 2.0 to church 3.0. It is storms from 2017 to 2020. So I will just give you a very kind of a short depiction of Zion Church by the end of 2017. What is the size? So every Sunday we have around 1,200 to 1,600 people coming for worship. During the Christmas season, for 2 days, we might have 3,000, 4,000 visitors. So it's kind of a sizable church, not by no means the largest, so anyway, but in Beijing, it's a good size. We have a kind of facility of 2,800 square meters. So the facility also is big enough. The size is, the second thing is the structure. We have a structure very much like a, if you may, not a mega church, but a large church. We have our deacons, we have our elders, we have one center facility, but we have 10 campuses. So it's very much like not a mega church, a large church you can see in North America. What's the strategy by the end of 2017? What we were planning to do during that time? We plan to continue plant new campuses. We use a central campuses as a resources center, but produce videos and build up satellite campuses. It's very much like an ARC, if some of you know, a church planting movement organization in America. So it's basically we plan to grow by satellite campuses. So all this to many of you would not be unfamiliar because basically we learned from the Western world. But since 2017, we met storms. The first one is the political pressure. The one thing I want to mention is on March 21st, 2018, in the latest institutional reform of China, the state affairs, state administration of religious affairs, also known as SARA, was restructured from State Council, 国务院, it's a state organ, to the United Front Work Department, which is a party organ. This is not a reform forward, it's a reform backward. It signals China moves away from governing religious issues as a civic issues, like the common standard or the common word, or what has been practiced by the majority of this world, back to see the religious issues as a threat or ally to the party, as in the wartime. Back in the wartime, this is how it has been governed. So it's an institutional reform backward. So this reform also produced a very much can be hotly discussed regulations called the Regulations on Religious Affairs. In this new regulation, the most important chapter is chapter 4, the premises for religious activity. I underlined one sentence, please. You can see it. The purpose of formation does not violate the provisions of Article 3 and Article 4 of this regulation. This is the #1 principle, how to govern kind of a premises for religious activities. So what is Article 3 and Article 4? And as you can see here, I'm sorry, my mouse, I cannot see the full things, but it's called protecting the legitimacy, stopping the illegitimacy, containing the extreme, resisting the penetration. So if they see your religious activity as some penetration of the foreign force, they would revoke the power for that. But more importantly, it's Article 4. There's one sentence is called to try to help the religious, how to direct the religions to adapt to the socialist society. So if your religious activity cannot adapt to the socialist society, you should not have a meeting ground. So the whole focus, or very much the central focus of the new regulations, focus on the premises, try to control it, or somebody say animate it to the animation of the religious kind of premises. And also happened is COVID-19, that's the second storm. Nobody expected, but ironically, it has the same effect in terms of its impact on the church, because due to the COVID, nobody can gather. So even if you still have the facility, not like our church was shut down by the government in 2018, our older facility. But even if you still have your facilities, you cannot use it. You cannot use it. So that causes the 3 major challenges. The first, obviously, the loss of facilities. We cannot gather, we cannot use it. The second is due to the loss of the facilities, the disruption to the congregation-centered ministerial models. They're very much in the old models. We have this facility, we build up all kinds of ministries, people come, and we serve them. But now we cannot use it. What should we do? We don't know. And the third challenge is, as I said, in Church 2.0, we learned greatly from the Western churches. But now, who should we learn from? And they don't have a CCP in their countries to regulate, to animate their premises, to have to adapt it to their ideology, except maybe North Korea. But most of the Western churches don't have that kind of a situation. Well, and in terms of the response to the COVID-19, the Western churches seems just unprepared as us. So suddenly we learned from Korea, we learned from Singapore, we learned from the United States, but now when we face this grave danger, we have nobody to learn from. So let's now move to the part 3, the path forward. So as we think, what is the path forward? We see, of course, a lot of answers to this question. A lot of people has their opinions how should this be done. And of course, no, it should be no surprise that we find a lot of passages that seems promising but wrong. So what are the two major wrong passages that we find? Or maybe one and a half. The first one is that should we going back to church 1.0? So Abraham actually originally has a title of Chinese urban house churches moving back to home. I don't like it. I told him I don't like the moving back. We have sought this a lot. The major thing is that for me is a theological issue to this kind of view. God does not turn back because the environment turns harsh. The party, I said, obviously they reformed backward. The party wants to go back, but God always pushes forward, no matter what. So we believe it's not going back to church 1.0. Even maybe in some sense, it looks familiar. For example, we now do use our homes much more than before as a ground for religious activities. But still, it's not church 1.0. I will explain what is different from church 1.0. So the second rejection is a half rejection. A lot of church and church leaders in these storms, of course, we go panic and we go, oh, well, which way is to go? And of course, the first bingo is going back to the Bible. So there's a strong sense that we go back to the early church. To this kind of a view, we have a yes and no answer. On one hand, we do need to go back to the early church. We need to find inspirations from the book of Acts and the early churches. We need to recollect and reinstall those precious principles, values, and practices that we somehow lost in our modern practices. Of course, we need to go back, find inspirations, and find kind of the revelation that's really valuable. And the second, but we also want to say no to this view. To going back to the early church does not mean we should neglect or even negate what God has done since the early church. We're not saying going back to the early church as if the 2,000 years of church history doesn't exist. We do not say that what church has done, what God has done in the past 2,000 years doesn't mean anything to us. So we should, on one hand, find inspirations from the Bible, but also we should not lose what God has given us in the past 2,000 years. So what do we need to do? As we moving forward, of course, in these storms, you can do very little. There are a lot of things that you cannot do. In Church 2.0, we feel our ministry are growing bigger. We have more and more, many types of things. But what are the most essential? We lost. Because, we have more people, we have more resources, we have more opportunities, we want to do more. But in the storms, we have to cut. We have to go back to the minimal and the most essential. We can only do the minimal and the most essential. So as we trying to find the right path, we ask us, what are the most essential things that we have to do no matter what? And we get these three things we have to do. First, we need to keep the individual healthy and growing. Of course, if you want to have a church, you first have to keep the individuals, everyone healthy. They at least needs to be, not sick, right? But not just healthy, but also growing. They need to grow in Christ in some sense. How can we do that? The second, not just individual, we also need to build vibrant and reproducible communities. And for that, equip and educate leaders. Leaders, by way leaders, I mean lay leaders and pastors, both of them. So how do we continue being vibrant and reproducible communities? As we spread into homes, we go back to church 1.0. But when people go back to home and let them to do everything, can they really be vibrant and reproducible? I very much doubt it. Without the support and kind of education and other resources to support them, it's very unlikely a small group leader by themselves can do that. Of course, if every small group leaders in your church is like Apostle Paul, there's no problem. But most of the small group leaders in our church don't look like that. They very much need us to keep doing that. And the third, also very important, is to keep the kingdom vision fresh. When you spread the church too thin, when you divide the church into small groups, very easily people lose the vision of the kingdom. They become self-centered. They become focused on their own issues. They focus on how do we survive, what are our needs, but they don't think about God's kingdom. How could we plant a new church there? How could we do missions? So how could we, when we spread the church into small groups, but keep the kingdom vision? So as we gather together, like in this gathering like this, when people from different parts coming together, we naturally think about the kingdom, because we cannot think about, if you just think about your home right now, there's no connection between us because we come from different countries, right? Our homes, our churches are very different. So when different people coming together, we naturally have a bigger vision. So we need to, divide it maybe into smaller groups, but people have to connect somehow with the bigger body of Christ, so that they can keep the kingdom vision fresh. So how should we do this? How should we continue to do this in this storm? On one hand, we should realize the newness of the environment and boldly explore new discoveries and implement new strategies. On the other hand, we should avoid the panic mode, wrongly rejecting what we already have that could be very useful and beneficial for this new situation. Therefore, what we did is that we had old things that we keep, but also new things that we experiment. So what are the old things that we keep? 4 things, basically. Our visions, the principles of urban ministries, 10 principles, design funnel, team ministry. I will explain. First, of course, we need to keep our visions fresh. I'm sorry I didn't translate this into English because sorry, next time I will make sure to have an English translation. No matter what, the original vision of the design church, listening to the word of God, build up Christ-centered families, pushing with all nations, go back to with all nations to all nations, missions. The third, fourth, cultivate the hope of the land. So we should never change our visions, even though in these storms, of course, we don't change. The second is the 10 principles of urban ministry that Ezra, our pastor, and the Zion Church has been practiced in the past 13 years. We found them be very helpful. Inspirational worship, gospel-centered sermons, response to the needs of the newcomers, healthy small groups, step-by-step disciple trainings, leadership as empowerment, empower others, faith-based mission, transparency and generosity on finance, pray all the time, do everything in love. These are the 10 principles we find very much effective even today. And the third thing, we call it the design funnel. I'm sorry, I don't have time to translate this again. It's basically a funnel that how we bring people in and keep growing them and then move them out to change this world. So it's a circulation of continually producing and growing people step by step and eventually send people out. So we found this funnel, even though in this time, still can function. And the fourth thing I very much want to emphasize is team ministry. The one big difference between Church 1.0 and Church 2.0 is that in Church 1.0, there's no team. There were heroes, there were leaders of one, there were role models, but there was really no team. We shouldn't blame them because the size is very small. And also the time was very difficult. So it's very hard for a group of people to come in working together on a certain issue for long term to develop collaboration or develop excellency in doing that thing. And also because this congregation size is so small, there's no division of work. So you don't need different teams to handle different things. But now we have a media team, we have a writers team, we have a kind of a worship team, we have different kinds of team. And we have developed a very good kind of a excellence in doing all that things. So we shouldn't go back and give up the team ministry. We shouldn't go back to Church 1.0 and to do our ministry worse than before. So these are the things that we try to keep. And what are the things that we implement? These majorly three things. First, not come, but go. In the congregation-centered kind of a ministry model, we build a strong, and very, very attractive center. We attract them with worships. We attract them with Sunday schools. We attract them with good sermons. We attract them with handsome ushers. And we attract them with good food. We attract them with wonderful activities. We want them to come to the center. Look how wonderful. It's like the happiest place on earth. Please come. It's kind of a spiritual Disneyland for everyone, right? We want to, actually, Zion Church in Beijing used to be kind of a tourist destination for the Chinese Christians. When they come to Beijing, they want to see this legendary Zion Church. They want to see our cafe, which, you know, we used to have I thought the best coffee shop in Beijing. So we attract them to come, but now we don't have it, right? What should we do? Of course, we can reproduce this kind of, trying to find a lesser place, doing a lesser excellent works to try to, still attract people to come. But no, we give up that. We want to see to go. We bring the church to the people. We bring the congregation to the people. We move our church to any place that the people are. So we had a saying back in 2019. We would use any place in Beijing usable as a church. So we rented all kinds of places that you can never imagine. We rented, of course, office buildings, if we may. We rented an apartment. We rented a cinema. We rented a kind of meeting places. We rented a karaoke place. We rented a kind of a barbecue place, restaurants, and a lot of unimaginable kind of a variety of locations for gathering. So we want to bring the church, would not come, but go. That's how we bring the church. So when we go to the people, we don't bring them with our ministries. We bring the church with the people that we go. So we send the people who has these Christ-like values and also the kingdom mindset, trying to serve them. So not come, but go. That's a major for me as a pastor. I still remember the third day that we lost our old facility. And I went out on the second day. I was taken into the custody, so I couldn't go out. And on the third day, when I moved out, I went to meet one of our sisters. And as I remembered, I drove to that place, and I put my feet on the ground. I feel like, the Bible says Jesus went from town to town. Jesus went from town to town. 耶稣走遍各城各乡. I feel so good, really. My heart was rejuvenate. It's kind of a rejoice that I cannot describe to you. I feel this is the right way. I should not wait in this big facility when my brothers and sisters come to meet Pastor Franklin, but I should go. I should go. So the first thing is not come, but go. So now I send myself from Beijing to Shanghai to go. Actually, by the way, I moved our home due to some urgency. We moved in 36 hours. 36 hours we moved out. It's like a wartime. We just say go. Our whole family, me, my wife, and 2 kids, come. Thank God, my wife still keep her calm. The second thing, the new things we try to implement is the online-offline mode of ministry. Online is not a virtual world. It is the new frontier. It is the new land. It is new sphere of human existence, activities, and interactions. That many people still were dragged into this online. But what we should do is actively engage, explore, and pioneer to build good infrastructures online. So we very much emphasize on that. The third thing is we call it strong core but open church. We need to have a very strong core, have a kind of a sort of a resources center, a ministry hub, a platform to connect different kinds of people to coming together. We need to have a strong core team. So very much committed, similar value, have a strong personal relationship and everything. But the church would become more like a network, more open. Why? Because you have so much things happens online. And the people from different parts would connect. So they would find some support and resources maybe from different types of churches. So if you want to keep your church door closed, if you like before that just, oh, everything's just from one single church, there's no way to do that now. So to keep the core strong, to connect, but also to be open. So one great example is our Christmas in 2020. I will share that later. So the central characteristic of Church 3.0 we find right now is from Church 1.0 to Church 2.0, we moved from homes to office buildings. We moved into the society. As Jesus says, the city should be built up hills, and the lamps should be put on the stamps, so it should shine. It should shine. So we moved from homes to the top of hills. We shine into the society. We moved into the society. Now we were forced out of the office buildings. So where should we go? Certainly not going back to homes. Where should we go? From office buildings to the public squares. Disappear or immerse in the people, in the society. Not disappear, still keep the characteristics of Christ-centered communities, but somehow we exist in the whole society. Every home, every cinemas, every office building, any place we can find. So really from everywhere to everywhere. And online as the new frontier. And that's what we believe is the central characteristics of Church 3.0. So what did we do in kind of a sort of a, the activities or the things we did from 2018 to 2020? The first thing we did is the Zion Bible Institute. Actually, that was the first response we had. After 2018, we lost our facility. What we were trying to do in Zion Bible Institute is to release the theological training from seminary campuses to the general public. We try to give them short-term, but concise, but also in-depth, a deep theology, not some just, oh, how to have a, kind of thing. We want to equip every possible leader. We want to equip at any time, at any place, to anybody. So from 2018 to 2019, we have 500 students, and we have many people who gathering, offline, small groups. Then in the COVID-19 hit, right? In 2020, we were worried, oh, how should we do that? But we implement the online and offline model. Guess how many students we have in 2020 this year? Close to 2,000. So quadrupled the numbers compared to what we have done before. And now every class we have is some, we were having these classes more than 150 or 200 people even come and join one class. So we still doing this new type of theological education. That's the first. The second is Zion Church. So we moved from Beijing to 15 different cities, at least, because it's keep growing. We from one congregation in Beijing to 63 now around China. Those congregations is measured by, has a team in place, has a minister in place, and also implement the whole system. And so in their gathering, in their congregation. So now we have 63. Every Sunday, we have at least 1,500 or 2,000 devices every Sunday. So because sometimes for one congregation, they come together to use one device. So a congregation may be a size of 50 or 70. So we expect at least 3,000 to 8,000 people gathering every Sunday for the Sunday services. That's much larger than what we had before. And the third thing, we move from offline to online. So that's how we struggled at the first place. We used to have a community that was established primarily due to the offline kind of a on-site kind of a relationship. So then how can we strengthen this relationship, continue grow this relationship and the community online? But then as we developed our online ministry, we find new challenges. If you continue only do everything online, the relationship, the communities, the visions, the transformation only go this far. So we have to be able to move those relationships we established, we created online to offline. So where I stand right now is a result of this. So before in Shanghai, we have nobody here. We have friends here, but we have no congregation at all. But in 2020, we have people that gather online. They just keep hearing our online ministry, and we keep talking through all the social networking apps. And they build their own local groups that kind of trying to integrate. And then we send our pastors, which is in this case myself, to this place, have them together to build a congregation. Now we have 2 congregations in Shanghai, size together around 70 to 80 people. That's a good size, and they still keep growing. So how can we move from offline to online, but also from online to offline? So that's what we do. So then in 2020, we have a Christmas. I told you before Christmas in the old days, we had 3,000 to 4,000 visitors on the Christmas Eve, Christmas ends, weekends. But how many people we have this time? 2 nights? Very much 300,000. How could that happen? We do it online. 2 nights. We of course don't have the precise number, but we very much at the minimum would be 200,000. The maximum would be somewhat 400,000. So we use kind of a middle number. And what is also amazing is about this Christmas, it's not just done by our church. Actually, much of the content of the Christmas celebration coming from other churches. So we built this strong center team to support. And other people just come, they send their materials, we put them together, have an excellent director, and then they become the Christmas kind of a celebration. So it's amazing kind of a really kind of inspirational event, even for all of us. For us, it's a shock for us as well. We never expect that. So that's Zion Church, but not just the Zion Bible Institute or Zion Church, or what we did by ourselves. We also see unprecedented collaboration with churches around China. The Chinese church has never been closer than this time, has never been closer. The church leaders meet every week, sometimes every day in the first few weeks of the COVID-19. So people just have this meeting, that meeting, this. In the past 20 or 30 years when they doing ministries in China, they have never met as frequently as right now. And we now have this 4 things that we do that, of course, there are many more, but I just want to mention this 4. The first is centenary mission and centenary praying. 百年宣教, 百年祷告. So in China right now, there's a 24 hours, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year. We wanted to pray for 100 years. How could we do that? Of course, we don't move to a place called Moravian and build a community there. We build online prayer time. So it's a continual prayer online that we open this Zoom, and the people from the whole China coming together to pray, and it's amazing. It's amazing. Our church, we do our church and our lead work we do on the 17th of each month. And me, I asked for the last 2 hours. It's always my time, so I always preach in the last 2 hours of the 17th. So this is amazing. This is the biggest lead work in China right now. I don't know how many churches got involved and how many leaders. And second one is Shalom China. For every Monday, Chinese pastors coming together to share what's going on, their visions, their histories. A third thing is church planting and urban church ministry. So they talk about how can we do. So it's also every Monday afternoon. And the fourth thing is transform China. It's not just concerning about church or missions. It's concerning how to bring the churches into the society. How about family and marriage issues? How about business? How about education? So we talk about all of that on every Saturday morning. In the past, the Spring Festival in China, we did this 9 days straight kind of a revival meeting of Transform China meetings. In China, during the Spring Festival time, it is always the spiritual downturn. That's all the pastors face a kind of a downturn because the ancestor worship issues, the idol worship, and the people become more kind of just indulgent in their desires. So a lot of bad things happen, and the church always feel a kind of a drag on the Spring Festival. But not this year. This year, it's more like a spiritual kind of a revival meetings for 9 days straight. When people go back to home, they still access to excellent speakers and great messages during the Spring Festival. It's a great support for them. So every day we have around 5,000 to 10,000 people coming online. It's not a big number in China, but still it's unprecedented. It's all around China, and these people feel kind of that pressure. And the fourth thing what we did is the missions in this tumultuous time. We should never forget about missions. The first thing I want to mention is that God seems to have a separate purse and a separate heart for mission. The first thing, a separate purse, is Ezra mentioned. Ezra said, God has a separate purse. So when you give to missions, it's a separate purse. So those money that are going to the missions would never go to the church. So if your church don't do mission, you don't expect those money come to your church. God has a separate purse. But I almost feel like I have a separate heart. Perhaps I should have my whole heart for mission, but as someone who is doing mostly kind of pastoral ministry and the theological education, I don't really do mission kind of that directly. Of course, they would disagree with me in terms of how to do what does mean. But I just want to see, even though I focus on doing pastoral ministry and theological education, I feel my heart pounding so hard for mission. The zeal, the passion I feel for mission is different. So anytime, any place, we should focus on mission. We should remember mission. We should never stop our mission. And the missionary training should never be stopped. So we should move from missionary as individuals to mission centers. We find out just send 1 or 2 heroes out, it's not good. We need to send groups out, people to centers. So in some mission field, now we have 29 missionaries from our church in the cross-cultural mission field. Even after 2018, we sent out, I think, at least 10 more missionaries in the most difficult time. When our church was at the most difficult time, we cut down all the pastoral teams, our salaries, but we didn't cut a penny from mission works, not a penny. So we also need to focus on the Great Commission as evangelism, as discipleship, as cross-cultural mission together. They should never be separated. It's one thing, the Great Commission. And the last thing I want to mention, I think I got some inspirations from Abraham, is that we used to think of mission as ethnic groups. But maybe more as we look at our church work, as a look at our society, we gradually see more and more social segregations as also growing kind of a division of a social segmentation than ethnic groups. That has something to do with my PhD dissertation because it's focused on group identity. We developed people into ethnic groups because they were divided by their language, their values, their culture, and their geography. But now, more and more, as we see this urbanization of the society, but by urbanization, people don't just move into this homogeneous group, but churches, people still divided, but they were not divided much lesser and lesser by ethnic groups, but more and more by their social segregations. So we believe that we're also kind of sort of a mission that across social groups, social sectors, or social segments, whatever terms you want to use, that is also something very important that we need to do. So as we look into the future, I see 4 new things: a new world, new churches, new leaders, and new collaborations. First is the new world. Why? The Sino-US relationship would never be the same. The good old days would never come back. After COVID-19, the world would not be the same. A lot of things would not be the same. So we are moving to this new world. We need to see this new churches coming, not in terms of its accents, but the kind of existence of, because the human existence exists in this new world in different ways. The church also expanded into different spheres. What does it mean to be a church in 5G or even 6G? The tool is already in the box. Ecclesia, how can we build church in every home? And the disappearance of borders due to this new technology. Elon Musk, I pray he would build up this kind of a satellite network on the sky, so free the Chinese people from all the great firewalls. I pray he would do that. A new church, the disappearance of the border. So anyone try to keep the border, I think it's very much against what the Lord is moving this world to. And third thing very much we need to do is the new leaders. We need new leaders for the new generations. A lot of the things I mentioned that could be done is because that we keep raising younger and newer leaders. In our ministry team, the youngest one right now I have on my team is 24. When he came in, he was 23. But he played such a major role. Without him, there is no possibility we would have a Christmas of 2020 of 300,000. Because he came in with this new ideas, with this new. So we need to raise new leaders. And the last one, new collaborations. The disappearance of a border would bring together churches, denominations, and even people, brothers and sisters from different countries. So in the Transform China, I just mentioned during the Spring Festival, We have speakers from all different kinds of denominations. They all come together. They share their vision. So new collaborations will become more and more. And I thank God for that. So lastly, I hope after my presentation, you feel the same way. We have never been closer to this vision. The whole church taking the whole gospel to the whole world. Thank you very much.
My gosh, thank you so much, Franklin, for sharing with us. You really put me to tears, especially when you said you cut the pastor's salary, but not the missionary salary. And I guess this is a time for questions, but my first question, as you are thinking, can you please write your questions here on the chat, and we can ask Franklin some questions. But my question is actually, how did you send 10 missionaries, and where did you send them while you guys were being attacked? That just kind of makes me wonder, how can you still send out missionaries when you can't even meet? So tell us a little bit about that.
First of all, it is a continual work. It's not like we find 10 more new missionaries ready to go. It's a continual work that we have done before. So those candidates was kind of in the queue. They were in training. They were ready to go. They were on the plan. The second thing amazing is that when we lost our facility, we saved a lot. We saved a lot. So the rented price every year we pay is around 3 even to 4 millions RMB. So that's around 700,000
US dollars per year.
Yeah,
right?
500 maybe to up to 600 US dollars a year. So we save that money, even though when we the first difficulties, those givings were less, but after a few months, those coming back. So what should we use? We use it for missions. So actually our finance was getting back on footing within 1 year, and very healthy and very strong. Maybe even stronger than before. So actually when you rent a place, you pay a lot. So with those people, kind of a reservoir we have before, but also with those kind of growing resources. But a lot of things that I want to emphasize, it's amazing. It's amazing how people respond to missions. That when we were in the most difficult time, when we go around and trying to gather people together, sometimes 10, sometimes 20, when we mention the missionaries on the field, people come into tears. People just gave like, wow. So that's what I mean. God has a separate purse and a separate heart even for mission. So it's just like you would expect during the difficult time, people would think of, oh, how about my family? How about my issues? No, it's not the case, actually. It's actually what we find out, at least according to my case, when we talk about mission, people get more kind of robust, oh, yes, we need to go for mission. So it's kind of have that kind of amazing effect. So it's a mystery for me, but David, you are missionary, you expert on that. You can explain to me why is that? I'm just as a pastor, I found out that to be true. So it's really, I find when we focus on mission, it seems that people just really get onto that. Yeah.
Thank you, Franklin. Okay, does anyone else have a question here? Let's see here from Seth. The idea that you shared about being an attraction model seems to similar to what some of the mega churches in the US. But back in the mid 2000s, Willow Creek did a study called Reveal and realized that since they were more attractional, but they lacked in discipleship. What is Zion Church doing differently so that they have a strong discipleship culture and can sustain instead of a church filled with consumers?
Yes, that's an excellent question. And of course, I think a lot of you have heard this comparison between kind of a worship and what 游艇怎么说来着? Kind of a tourist ship, mega church turns out easy to be fall into that trap. Actually, Zion Church is no exception. We were no exception. We will also gather a lot of consumers. They're ready to consume, but thanks to the party, We have no that problem anymore. So I really want to thank to the harsh environment. It keeps the church pure. It pushes people to ask two questions when you face kind of challenges, when you are holding on your faith. Basically, these two questions are: what are you believing? What I'm doing here? And second, is it worth it for me to sacrifice? Is it also, should I pay the price for that? So I think during the harsh times, it really kind of have that kind of effect on our church. It's less about what we did to keep the discipleship strong. It's more like, I would say, that when we see this, when we see what God has used the environment and the situation to change people's heart, to show us those people who are committed and who are faithful, who are willing to sacrifice, we take that chances, train them. We didn't miss them. We didn't just keep them, oh, have your faith, that's good. You're strong, you're good. We trained those people who were faithful under persecutions. So right now, one thing that I didn't mention is that the size of our ministry team doubled. Actually, this year is probably going to be tripled or quadrupled maybe next year. So when we were in the most difficult time, what Ezra, our pastor, did is that to train the young leaders at his home. One partial reason is that he was afraid that he would lose his freedom, just as I did. So we try to educate the young leaders as much as we can when we still have the freedom. So really, it feels like the last. So I told my students, take each lesson as if this is your last lesson, and take each sermon as if this was your last sermon. So this actually was really the mentality. We lose some of it as the time passed by, but still right now, as this new wave of hardship coming in, we kind of revive a little bit. So that kind of a mentality, that kind of, we more likely, I should say, we took the chances and we didn't miss it, and we educated those people that God has shown to us, be faithful and kind of, yeah, good leaders, promising leaders. So yeah, David.
Okay, third question here comes from Daniel Lee from China. Of course, it's in Chinese. You can read it there, but I'll translate into English. What is the meaning of the Great Commission, especially in the past with mission being more of cross-cultural, unreached people groups? Now you mentioned social stratus, reaching different segments of society. Does that change the goal of missions, especially the confusing or maybe muddling local evangelism with cross-cultural missions?
Okay, first of all, I'm a pastor, I'm a theological educator, I'm not a mythologist. So I'm not here to be the new one to promote a new idea of a mission or to try to, disturb what every people has been talking about and the kind of a clear goal to reach in the next 20, 30, 70 years. And that's not my goal. I'm simply presented as my observation. As I mentioned, I did my PhD dissertation on group identity. So, and I should mention that before 1970s, probably people don't even think about ethnic groups as that kind of a division. So I don't know. I'm not saying that we should change or not change, but what I'm trying to say is that according to my observation, social segmentation is a strong force in dividing people into different groups. These different groups has different kinds of values, practices, daily routines, lifestyles, and even languages. So Uyghur software engineer probably have more common languages with a Chinese, Han Chinese software engineers than a Uyghur farmer. So, that's real. So it's not like I like it or not. It's just a reality that I'm saying. So I'm simply, so I'm not here to challenge missionary model is not. I'm just presenting what I'm saying. So it's left to David or the other or his brother Jonathan, who has a PhD on mythology, to solve that issue. I'm simply present what I'm trying to. I'm not trying to, of course, not model the water or anything. I think I think we need to do. Yeah.
Okay, last question here comes from another Chinese here, or just saying, now that the foreign missionaries have been cannot enter China under this certain context with Church 3.0, what can foreign missionaries still do in China?
Okay. To be frank, I haven't thought about this question for a while because when I was in the United States, I was asking, this kind of questions very often by foreigners. But now, as I was serving in China, so I met less kind of a missionary were intended, but I did have a missionary still working around us. So I do get those questions, but not as hard as before. But still, I think my answer was pretty much the same as maybe 2 or 5 years ago. So when I was asked this question 2 or 3 years ago, my answer is always anything you want to do, anything you want to do. China is a big country, and there were a lot of things that are undone. Even though you might say, oh, in this one city, there's strong churches here, but in other cities, there were no church there at all. So it doesn't matter what you want to do. You can find a suitable field for your ministries here. Now, as we face this new situation, as the kind of the borders, as the movement of people is more difficult to do because of the plague. Of course, it's more challenging for getting a visa or getting in. But thank God we have Zoom, right? So before we can never imagine we can do this. And now, come on, even when I was in China, even when I'm in China, much of my ministry to my congregation is through Zoom, even in the same city. So much of the time I with my congregation in Shanghai or in Beijing was through Zoom. So what's the difference? It doesn't matter whether you're Singapore or Philippines or America. If you can get up at 2 a.m., you can still do ministry. I feel that there's, and also people got used to that type of ministry. So I see more openness in terms, not less actually, I see more openness. And I expect through more collaborations that we can even really develop creative new methods of doing missionary works. I really believe so. Of course, if you ask me what exactly should I do, probably I would strongly recommend you go and find a local partner or someone who share with you so that your ministry would be helpful or somehow connected with their ministries in the field. And if you don't know anyone to go, ask David. He would sure point someone to you. And I think that can be easily done. Yeah, that's my answer.
Okay, our time is up now, but maybe Franklin, if you can close us in prayer. But this is one question that everyone's asking. Isn't the Chinese government monitoring you and with the 300,000 people? And what if Zoom is closed? What's for Church 4.0 going to look like?
Yes, so they can close Zoom, but we have other ways. Maybe not as popular. They would not turn back 5G. So they might turn off one platform. It would cause some disruption, that's for sure. But I believe the creativity would overcome that kind of regulations. We don't believe the borders can stand any longer. And second, did they monitor us? And for sure. But yes, here we are. So yeah. So yeah, if I still have my freedom, I would do what I do. I'm a pastor. What should I do? that's who I am. So if I still, you can take away my freedom. That's your authority. But when I have my freedom, I have to use that for this. So yeah, that's kind of a mentality we have. So I believe a lot of people in China do have that. I don't buy it the saying that we should preserve ours for a better time. Mm-hmm. This is the best time. And this is the best time to testify for Christ. Let me pray. Dear Lord, I want to thank you for tonight. Thank you for this gathering of your faithful servants from all the corners of this world, particularly probably from Asia, from our dear friends that I know from Japan, from Korea, from Mongolia, from Singapore, from Malaysia, Philippines, Taiwan, many other places. I just want to thank you for tonight. My heart really rejoices as I see these old friends and new friends. And as I share this, what we learned, or what we have been blessed by you, uh, it's just a strange thing that I feel such a rejoice. And I pray that what I shared tonight would be a blessing to all these people who come. And if there's anything that is not pleased to you, could you, your grace, cover that? And I pray for all of us in all kinds of situations, no matter what, trying to do our pastoral ministry, trying to do theological education, trying to do mission works, or in whatever fields that we are in. Lord, please give us strength, give us encouragement, give us the creativity, give us what you know that we need. And we would rely on you, and we believe you are still the Lord, and you are still in control. And you raise this storm not to scare us, but to teach us what is faith. Thank you. Praise your name in Jesus' name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay, thank you so much, Franklin. We're now going to go divide into small groups. If you have to leave, you can also leave if you want, but the organizers will divide us according to our language in our countries. And I'm just going to suggest you continue to discuss and talk about what Franklin shared, but also close up in prayer and in your own time. We won't be coming back here, but I'll stay here in this room for a while just to host questions for those who don't get taken into small. And Franklin, can you stay in this room too as well? Maybe if for those who want to have questions directly, can stay here with you.